Hey, church, welcome back to week 4 of our Living Sense series this summer. So glad that you've been tuning in over the last 3 weeks and now our 4th week. If you have been, you'll notice that we have been thinking about this idea of building relationships, all under this first and main component of the missionary task. If you're new to the missionary task, you'll know that there are 6 components around this curve, we like to say. The first is the idea of entry that we've dubbed as building relationships. That is followed by this second component we'll look at later this summer that is coined evangelism. We've called it sharing Jesus. As you make your way around the curve of the missionary task, you know that it's followed by discipleship and healthy church formation, and then leadership development, and then lastly, exit. But here we are, week 4 of 5, when we're thinking about this idea of building relationships, which is part and parcel of effective biblical, conversational, and cultural evangelism, where we meet people where they are to share the good news of Jesus with them. We'll be thinking about those things later this summer in the month of July. But here we are, week 4. We're thinking this week about follow-ups and invites. Now, if you've been with us for the last 3 weeks, you'll know that we began this process, this journey of building relationships, thinking about the people business. That's something we use. That's nomenclature. That's language that we use here at Coates Baptist Church. And we just remind ourselves that, hey, look, God is in the people business. He loves people. He sent His own Son to die for people. And therefore, if we're about any business at all, we are about the people business. But not only that, as we kind of move forward in a healthy trajectory towards gospel conversations, that's component 2, we're thinking about knowing our neighbors. The reality is that God knows where you are. He knows your address. He knows people on the left and right of you. And He's put you in a contextual, cultural, very much an incarnational state where you meet other people. It's a relational life we live, and we are to know other people. That's where really this missionary task has to go from a people business conviction. But after that, we're thinking about God's way of hospitality, not just the world's way, but how does the Christian manifest such a life in a hospitable way where we're not just knowing people, but now we're seeking to love on them, seeking to meet their needs, and so forth. Pastor Jonathan talked with us last week about hospitality. So here we are, week 4. We're talking about follow-ups and invites. I want you to think with me just for a few more minutes about what does that mean, not only for your life and for mine, but what does that mean as we make our way around the missionary task? Well, let me take your mind in 2 different places. The first is usually my mind goes to the ministry context, the ministry mind, the ministry thinking when you say follow-up and invites, because I think of connection cards, I think of Sunday morning, I think of throughout the week when I'm on the phone, emailing, texting. You may do the same thing. You're thinking about, well, I'm following up with people that I met at church. I'm inviting people to come with me to church or whatever it might be, to a program, to an event, to a sporting thing, something connected with ministry. That's fantastic. We need to go there. We need more follow-up. We need more of that culture in the local church. However, that's not where we want to go for week 4. We actually have to go a little bit upstream from that. Let me kind of give you an axiom to maybe drive your thinking. That before we get to ministry, we actually have to think like a missionary. That mission actually precedes and must drive the ministry. In a sense that I have to think about, what does it look like for me to be a missionary, inviting and following up with people in the context of building relationships before I ever have the privilege of actually ministering to them. So really what we're talking about today is we're talking about, how do I take the relationship, the early relationship of just knowing my neighbors, maybe serving them in a hospitable way, moving it from somewhat of an acquaintance kind of relationship to what we might call in our culture mere friendship, actually taking the relationship to a next level. Here's maybe a thesis for you. I want you to begin to think about making friendships is completely my responsibility. Now, theologically, we'll push back on that and say, listen, God owns that prerogative. He owns that agenda. If He wants us to become friends, if He wants me and someone else to be a friend, He has the ability to do that or undo that. However, when we're thinking about missional living and missionary tasks, well, you want to think through it from a human perspective. I want to do everything in my power from an earthly perspective, a human perspective, to make a friendship happen. Lay that at the feet of the Lord Jesus, and if He wants that to be, so be it. But I don't want it to be on me that we didn't make friends because I didn't do my part. So when we think about moving from an acquaintance to a friendship, let me give you a few easy areas of life that are oftentimes entry points, if you will, into a deeper conversation with people that you've obviously had a conviction, a philosophical conviction behind you saying, I'm in the people business, I'm getting to know my neighbors, I'm using some form of hospitality to deepen that relationship. So here's number one. Think with me about personal care. Personal care, sicknesses, stress, maybe two words in your mind of how can I follow up on something with someone, whether it's a sickness they've had or a stressful thing they've had in their week. You know, you may be outside in the backyard, you may be somewhere at work, and you just maybe one week learn from whatever reason that they've got something going on in their life. Regardless of the time and place, you might be able to say maybe the next day, next week, hey, you mentioned this was happening in your life. Hey, how's that going? You know, what will happen over time is the Lord will use the how's that going question to actually knit together a relationship. The second, how about family calendar? Family calendar. By the way, these are alliterated. So if I serve as your pastor, if you happen to be watching this as a Coach Baptist congregant, you'll know that I like to alliterate. So I apologize, wink, for this. But number one, obviously, we're thinking about the care of the individual. Number two, the calendar, family calendar, whether it's birthdays, vacations, sporting events. It's the time to cut my grass and we're both slit seeding our front yards together. We're just talking about calendar of events. That is a fantastic way to follow up and maybe invite people into a deeper relationship. How about number three? This is probably one of my favorites, cultural customs. Whether it be Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, we're always planning things. We're busy people with busy schedules. Follow up on just the calendar of events. Hey, how did your vacation go? Oh, you went somewhere. My family and I, we went there 2 years ago. That was a great, did you go get donuts here? Did you go to that beach pier or whatever it might be? That's a great way to say, hey, I want to follow up with you to deepen that relationship. Here's number four. This may be the hardest of all. The local church. That's really where we're really wanting to go with this, is that you might have the opportunity to follow up on something to do with church. Sooner or later, if you have a long enough conversation, a deep enough conversation, you're going to get to the place where you're like, you know what, I'm actually a follower of Jesus, and let's have a conversation about church. Let's have a conversation about spiritual beliefs. Here's the reality. You're going to meet a lot of people in your life. You're going to meet a lot of people today, likely. And the things that are going on in your world and your mind, the stresses and all the open windows, those are happening in their life too. And here's the reality. The fact of the matter is that they are probably asking themselves the question, does anybody even care? God has put you in their world to ask them that question. Hey, how's it going? You just never know what might come of that question. Hope you have a great week, church. Hope you enjoy this study. So glad that you're a part of this with us here at week 4. God bless you.